And here in Parker, Arizona, where I'm at, it's 71 degrees today. We Googled it. Siri said it was 71, and so we said that's what it is. And I know a whole bunch of the country is still frozen under that polar vortex. It's terrible out there. I read in the paper in one of my news feeds today that the overnight low in Indiana was minus 38. All-time record. It's never been that cold in Indiana before, minus 38. Well, that's cold. And so I wanted to get out a video to you real quick on how to deal with this kind of extreme cold. Now, mostly we're going to focus on normal cold, 30s and 20s, but I want to cover the extremes as well. Now you say, well, Bob, you live in the desert. Who are you to talk about living in extreme cold? Well, I didn't always live in the desert. My family moved to Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, in 1961, and I lived in Alaska until 2006 when I retired and left. So I know a little bit about being in extreme cold. Here are all my tips on staying warm. Number one, be a snowbird. I mean, good grief. It's 71 degrees here and you're coping with 20, 30, below zero. And wind chills. I'm hearing wind chills of 60 and 70 below in some of the northern states. So obviously the best choice is just to turn that key and drive away. You say, Bob, why would I ever want to be a snowbird or be a nomad? So you can turn that key and drive away. When there's bad things happening around you, you turn that key and you drive away, and you find good things happening around you. Well, it's half the people in the camp here are wearing shorts today, and I'm wearing a nice, pleasant shirt. It's nice. Now, I understand that many of you can't. Whatever your circumstances, I had just gotten divorced. My kids were in Anchorage, and I wasn't leaving in Anchorage. So that's why I lived in a van for 6 years and then that travel trailer for a 7th. Because I had no choice. And I understand that. And so for those of you who can't, I'm going to offer you solutions. So the number one solution is, and everyone just says, well, all you have to buy is a really good sleeping bag and then it won't matter. But that's fine, but you only sleep 8 hours a day. What are you going to do the other 16? Well, of course, you're going to sleep 8, and most of us are probably going to work. If you're in town, in some town in the Northeast or anywhere in the North where it's really, really cold, then you're probably working. You work 8 hours, you sleep 8 hours, that still leaves you 8 hours a day in miserable cold. And I tried that first in my van in Anchorage. I said, well, I'll just spend my day in the library or in restaurants or Barnes & Noble. Remember those? There used to be Barnes & Nobles. And so, but I couldn't. I mean, I just didn't want to spend my whole day outside of my van. So I had to find a way to keep it warm. And this is how I did it, and you can do it. First, heavy insulation. You need polyiso. It's about R7 per inch, an inch or two in the walls and in the roof, and your van will be comfortable. Then you need a source of heat. So if where you're at, it's below zero or even anywhere near zero, you need a source of heat. And of course, the first answer is Mr. Buddy. Mr. Buddy can't be left on at night, so it's not your first choice. My first choice and what I used was Olympian catalytic heaters. They're still making them today. I loved my Olympians. I had a Wave 3 and a Wave 8. Now the Wave 3, because I really heavily insulated my van. I knew it was going to be 30, 40 below. I'd lived there all my life. That's routine in Anchorage in the winter. And so I had heavily insulated 2 inches of styrofoam on the walls and 4 inches in the roof. It actually stayed pretty comfortable. The Olympian Wave 3 would keep it warm in an average Anchorage winter day, which is usually mid-20s a high and in the teens at night. That's a pretty typical average day in Anchorage in the winter. It's not an extremely cold place. It's still very far north, so it was that cold. But then then when it got down to around zero, I would turn off the Wave 3 and turn on the Wave 8. The Wave 8 would keep it warm to about zero. Once it got much below zero, I would turn them both on. And by the time it hit 30 below, it wasn't warm in the van anymore. It wasn't cold, I wasn't miserable, but it wasn't warm anymore. Both of them going on high made it okay. That was all, okay. And then that's when I learned the trick of using my stove as an additional heat. So during the day, I would just run the stove all the time, just like I do now. That's how I have what I do for heat now. And so between the three of them, I was pretty comfortable. They're all pouring out moisture, but it was so cold at 30 below. It's just unbelievably cold. The warm, moist air would go through the insulation, hit the walls, and then condense, and it was instantly turned into frost. So it just stayed there. Once it warmed up, once the cold snap broke, usually a week or 2 or 3, and it got up into the 20s again, and all that skin warmed back up during the day, it would rain in my van. I mean, it would rain. So condensation is a big problem, and it will be for you too if you're in extreme cold. I don't have any solutions. I literally put out buckets and moved anything where it rained that didn't get wet. That was my solution. I don't have one for you either. Okay, so a catalytic heater, an Olympian catalytic or Mr. Buddy will do you really good. We're also using now the big marine alcohol heater, and we've got a review on that, and you can check that out. It's not going to cope with 30 below or even 0. It's just not. It doesn't put out that much heat. You'll burn a lot of fuel. Nothing's going to beat propane for these kind of temperatures. So you can stay warm no matter how cold it is. I'll start with clothing. So now we're going to talk about your upper body, and as you can see, I'm all bundled up, and I'm going to do it in reverse order. This isn't how you would do it normally. You would start at the base layer and go out, because that's how you get dressed. But so I don't have to do that. I'm going to make it really easy. This is how I would dress in Alaska when it was extremely cold. I would probably have a more expensive outer coat. Everything would be a little more expensive. Also, an important thing to understand is that in extreme cold, don't wear any cotton. Cotton absorbs moisture. And so cotton is really wonderful in the summer because it absorbs moisture. So in the summer, you're active and you're perspiring, and that cotton holds that wet moisture against your skin, and that cools you. Moisture cools you. I think we all know that. And so it's great in the summer, but it's just the opposite in the winter. If you're active in the winter, or even if you're just sitting around, your body is still perspiring. That cotton absorbs the moisture, holds it against your skin, and what does that do? It cools you. So first off, in extreme cold, you would never wear any cotton. The saying in Alaska is cotton kills. Don't wear cotton. You would use polyester or some kind of nylons. There's the most current miracle thing is polypropylene, polypro. And so you would be wearing all those layers. Your base layers would all be that. And then, but we're going to start on the outside. So let me start with that. As you can see, this is a Columbia. It's down, and I'm really very happy. And you can see it's a hood. The most important thing you can have to stay warm is a hood. And I looked long and hard. I wasn't going to buy an outer coat that wasn't hood. They call it turbo down. That means, in this case, it has a layer of down alternative and then a layer of real down. And it also has this reflective. I don't know if this was any good or if it's just a gimmick, but they have this reflective and it can't hurt, so I don't mind having it. But I've been very, very pleased with this coat. It's like, you know, it's like $100–150, but it's been very warm. And this setup has, because I'm not in extreme cold, has worked so well. I mean, if it's in the 30s at night and I'm outside just sitting around talking to people, I'm completely comfortable in my upper body. So this is a really good system. And so these layers are what I would recommend to you. So on the outside, you have a heavy, very warm layer, and that's what this is, and it's real pleased. I'm real happy with it. And next you can see I've got a middle layer. This is what's commonly called a down sweater. And a middle layer of a down sweater is something I would really recommend. I got this at Sam's Club for $10. I looked at that and said, $10, it's real down. And I lose the feathers every so often. I really know it's real down. And it's really, really comfortable. So what happens is, as the warm air leaves your body, it keeps hitting these layers, and there's just a very thin amount of air in between the layers. That's what you want, just a very thin amount. And if you have like 2 layers, if I just had the heavy coat and my layer next to my skin, there'd be big gaps of air. And that's when you get cold, because you got to heat that air, and every time you move, that air moves around in that gap. You don't want big gaps. You want little thin gaps that are easy to warm. And the next layer keeps that warm, and then the next layer keeps that warm. So This would be the middle layer. This would be a medium weight layer, and this is very comfortable just by itself. And because I am not dealing with extreme cold, I don't mind wearing cotton. I just wear a cheap This is literally a $10 hoodie at Walmart, and so I find that a $10 hoodie, and this literally is $20 because I got this at Sam Club so cheap, but that's really hard to do. And of course, you got to have the mandatory duct tape on the holes with you get it. That's required. I paid extra for the duct tape. And so I really find this to be a very good layer system. I've been very comfortable with these layers. And then finally, again, this, if you're in the 40s and you're just a little cool, you want to just something done real quick, nothing beats a cheap hoodie or a good hoodie. Now, if I were in extreme cold, this is just cheap cotton. It would be fleece. It would be anything but cotton. If you could find a wool one, that would be ideal, but that would be really expensive and hard to find. Good quality wool is hard to find and really expensive. So I would just have a nylon, a fleece, anything that was not cotton, no cotton in it. And then I would just wear a cotton t-shirt, my normal cotton t-shirt, because I'm not dealing with extreme cold. Otherwise, you would have, wool is ideal, like merino wool, smart wool, really good. Now, let me tell you a huge disadvantage of the synthetic fabrics, the polyester, nylon, polypropylene. They stink, they really do, and they hold body moisture much more than cotton. Another huge advantage in why we wear cotton in the summer is because you're perspiring and you're working outside and you're sweating, and it just doesn't stink. It just doesn't hold moisture, odor. The polypro is the worst. Oh my goodness, you can't wear it more than one day and it'll start to really reek. So that is a problem, and they're coating it with antibacterial to try and solve that problem. Of course, then it costs a little more. So that is an issue with all of and I just don't wear them because I'm not in extreme cold. If I'm going to be around 20 below, I would have those fabrics. And I still have one or two, and I'll actually show those to you. So real quick, let me show you what I would do for a base layer. Okay, so I'm not going to show you my my leg layer or my feet layer. It just take too long. But let me show you. These are things I have left over from Alaska, where these things are so important that I had them in Alaska, and I've just kept them. This is what you're going to want as a base layer if you're dealing with extreme cold. You're on an expedition. This is what you're buying. It's clingy and it's tight, and you want it. And this one even has a zipper on the legging, so that you can get it really tight, and it's right up on your skin. And that's what you want. You want your base layer to be right close to your skin. No air gap between the base layer and your skin. And it's got to be some kind of polypro or man-made fabric. This one is 92% polyester and 8% spandex. And so it will be very tight. It won't even be really comfortable, but it will absorb the moisture from your skin. And these are what are called hydrophobic. Hydro means water, phobic means fearful. And so they're afraid of water, and they just pass it right through. The man-made fabrics do not absorb water, which cotton, of course, just wicks it all up and holds it. So this will move the moisture away from your skin to the next layer, which will also absorb it, and move it away to the next layer, which will also absorb it and move it away. So moisture is constantly moving away from your body, and your skin staying dry, and that's crucial in extreme cold. So I've worn these in lots of times in Alaska and haven't worn them since. And you can see how skinny those are. I'm not this skinny, I think you can imagine. But that's okay. These are not fashion. These go on the bottom and keep you alive. So those are very important. And these are actually fleece pants. And they're bigger. They're not as nearly as tight form-fitting, and they are polar fleece, Malden Mills polar fleece, and so they're 100% polyester, and they're fleece, actual fleece. Again, they will not absorb moisture. They're man-made materials. They can't absorb moisture, and so they don't. And so then I would have the base layer, this layer, and then my outer pants. Maybe it would be a pair of jeans. It could be almost anything. If you were in Alaska, it would probably be Carhartts. It would be a Carhartt coveralls, because in Alaska, that's what outdoors people wear. Okay, and then let's talk about socks. And this is also true for sleepwear. This is how I would sleep also, and I just happened, and because we've had some cold nights this winter, we've had an unusually cold winter for the desert, I happen to have these close at hand. This is just a cheap pair of some kind of nylon or polyester sock, but they're heavy, and so that's why I like them. They're a heavy boot sock, and this is Smart Wool, and Smart Wool is a premium brand. You probably familiar with a Smart Wool name. These are actual Smart Wool. Can you see that? And so you want a pure wool is almost the best fabric of all. It's just so expensive, and it doesn't dry very fast, whereas all the man-made fabrics dry really, really quickly. Wool does not dry quickly, but it has the unique characteristic of keeping you warm even when it's wet, and it's the only one that will do that. That will keep you warm even when it's wet. And so it's really unique in that way. And if you can afford good wool products, they are going to be your first choice. They don't dry as fast, and that is kind of a problem, but they do keep you warm even when they're wet. So these would be what I'd be wearing on under my boots. Now, none of you are going to be cold enough where you're going to buy, well, you might have snow packs. If you're in the Northwest or in Canada, Alaska for sure, you'll have snow packs, and this is what you'd be wearing in them because your feet are going to be wet. And so Smart Wool is really, really important then. Now, this is also what I wear to bed every night. If it's cold, if it's, say, in the teens, man, that's really cold down here in the desert. More likely it's in the 20s. Last thing before I go to bed, I will take off my normal daily socks because my feet are going to be sweating, have been sweating all day. You just can't avoid it. Your feet sweat. And I would dry them off really good and put on the base layer of these nylon or polyester, whatever they are, and then I would put on these Smart Wools over them. And they're really big, and this is the only time I ever wear these, is to bed. I bought them long time ago, and I wore them a little bit in boots, and then I stopped, and this is only for wearing to bed. They're always clean, they're always dry, they're always going to keep me warm, and even if my feet sweat, because it's wool, they'll still keep me warm. And that way you're going to keep your feet warm even no matter what's going on. And so that's really, really important. Talking about feet, I love these things. One of the things I recommend is that you not insulate your floor, but that you buy these instead. This will keep your feet warm. In my opinion is that you're not going to get the floor warm unless you've put in some really fancy air movement to get the hot air from the roof on down onto the floor, or you put in hot water baseboard heat underneath. You're not going to keep the floor warm. Better just to accept that and keep your feet warm with these. These are not down. They're down booties. That's what they had commonly called. They're down alternative. I don't know how they do it. It's a miracle. Even when your feet are sweating, your feet stay warm. And I don't understand that, but these are the best thing I've ever bought. They're hard enough bottom that you can wear them on a quick trip if it's not wet. Outside, go outside real quick and pee and come back in. I don't mind doing that at all. They're really, really, really good. These are some of the best money I've ever spent living in a van. I just really, really recommend them. You can get them on Amazon. They're made by Baffin. They're made by Baffin. I've always assumed they were Canadian, but just because Baffin is an island in Canada, I don't know if they're actually Canadian. At any rate, they're great. Love them. And of course, a hat and glove is going to be essential. And I even have great advice about hat and gloves. Aren't I just full of great advice? You think, well, I'll just buy a cheap old hat. And you can. Here's the problem. If there's any wind, that wind's going to cut right through that cheap old hat and pull it all away. And so this is the kind of hat I recommend. I don't know what this brand is. I just found it and loved it. It actually has layers of insulation inside it. And that means, first, it'll be much warmer on your head. But second, it means that the wind won't blow right through it. And it's easy to find out how any product will handle the wind. You just take it and blow through it. And I can feel air going through it. It's not completely blocking the wind, but it blocks it somewhat. And so any that it blocks it is good. If it blocks it totally, then that's even better. And gloves are, they're kind of a personal thing. You get whatever kind you like. But I've always really liked the fingerless. And these are insulated. They're Thinsulite on the inside. and then if you're photography, you're working outside or whatever, and then you can just pull that off, pull it over, and it becomes a mitten. Mittens are far, far, far warmer. If keeping your hands warm is essential, buy mittens. But you're going to have to work with your hands sometimes, so you need gloves as well. This kind of combines the idea of mittens and gloves, and I've been real happy with these. And again, I'm not dealing with extreme cold, so these are all I could possibly need. Okay, so this is how you're going to keep your body warm for the 16 hours a day you're awake. And then what about the 8 hours a night while you're asleep? Well, this video got too long, as all my videos do, don't they? So I'm going to just end this one here, and then we'll have a part 2 coming right up with more ideas on how to stay warm, both during the day and sleeping at night. With this next one, we'll cover a lot of sleeping at night. Go to the description, and there will be links to all these products that we'll talk about. And if you get them through that link, then I'll make a small percentage, and it won't cost you anything. I'm an Amazon affiliate. So thank you for watching. It was a long video, but hopefully it was worth it to you. If you got anything out of us, like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll talk to you later.